welcome to the next chapter of Business Reinvented. Today we will talk about e-commerce transborder or cross-border, depends how you name this, because this is a very exciting topic, and we have a guests who can talk about this a little bit more. But before we start, I give you some numbers from the recent research. The market is representing 10 billions of cross-border orders yearly, even over 10 billions recently. And based on the estimation, by 2030, the market value is expected to reach 1 billion US dollars. Then we are talking about big money. Okay, and right now, let's introduce our guests. Michał Gębala, Head of Partnership from Omnipack, and Mircea, CEO of Postis from Romania. Gentlemen, I know both of you, but I think it would be very good if you can introduce yourself to our audience briefly. Michał?
Hello everybody. So it's happy to be here and talk about a very important and interesting topic. I am, as you mentioned, Mirek. So I am head of partnerships here at Omnipack. Actually, also head of merchant success from the last week, and I am responsible for basically creating new opportunities among partners within the logistics market here at Omnipack, and both here in Poland and on the international level as well. From the personal point of view, I am a father of two daughters, Hania and Helenka, a fan of music, golf, and running.
Cool. Thanks, Michał. Mircea?
Yeah, I'm the founder and CEO of Postis. We started the business here, the startup, in 2016. We launched the product live in 2017, and now 5 years later, we cover not only Romania, but recently we opened a new office in Poland at the beginning of the year in March. And we expect to open a new office later this year in Germany. We are a tech company helping logistic and retailers to be more efficient and optimize their operational, activities. I will tell a few things about myself. I also have two kids, one boy and one girl. And I also like running and play football in, let's say, my previous life when I was a little bit younger.
We are not that old yet. Come on, we are not that old.
Yeah, we have a lot of things in common, not only the business, but also on the personal side, and also regarding the, let's say, activity that we open in Poland and also in Romania.
Super. Thank you for your introduction, guys. Let's talk about the business, because this is a Business Reinvented chapter. Michał, you're representing the Omnipack, the fulfillment center who are supporting merchants, sellers. What do you think? How you can help? How you're helping the customers to develop their business, and what is your best, let's say, description of your offer to your customers?
Okay, so basically Omnipack is a 3PL company, so third-party logistics company, and we help. So we have like our target audience are companies that are e-commerce businesses or selling direct to consumer, and we basically help companies grow frictionlessly so they can focus on their business by taking responsibility for their logistics processes. And I would say that this is like a full stack responsibility because we cover all logistics processes, starting from the data integration, which is kind of tech, similar to Postis, like your company, but also very brick and mortar. So goods inbound, warehousing, picking and packing, of course, delivering the goods, so shipment, and then returns. And what describes us and what differentiates us from some of the other logistics companies is the fact that we own our warehouses. So we have a great control over the quality of services that we are providing. And I would say that at the very moment, because we are based in Poland and we have our two warehouses here in Poland, but we are helping international brands from different countries, mostly from Europe. And we are covering like most of the geographies here in Europe. So our merchants can ship their goods across whole Europe at the very moment. And I would say that we are delivering goods most of the times within the 1 to 3 days time span in the whole EU.
Okay. Thank you, Michał. Michał, you mentioned you are delivering the packages across the EU, and Mircea mentioned before that he developed the IT company. Mircea, you are the IE master. You know, you are managing the millions of data, kilobytes every single second, and how your company can help companies like Omnipack or others to improve the last mile.
Thank you very much for the question. Starting from what Michał described, we are pretty much complementary because we are focusing on the last mile delivery. We deliver a software which try to optimize using the machine learning and AI algorithm what is the best, let's say, option to be delivered. We started also ourselves here in Romania. We collect some data, we improve our solution, and now we help retailers, logistics, 3PLs, and other companies which needs to be more efficient on the last mile delivery, how to choose the best option for them, how to have a transparent flow for the end users, to be always in control, and also to offer to the, let's say, shoppers what we call an unmatchable customer experience, fully integrated in the retailers or 3PL flows end to end.
Thank you, Mircea. Uh, Gents, we observed that e-commerce growing since many years. You know, in some countries, single digits. In some countries, double digits. Of course, pandemic just speed up for everybody. But right now, some of the people see some kind of the black clouds over the business. I'm not so sure because the people wants to buy through the network and they expect that packages will be shipped quickly. Uh, you're representing different markets, Polish market and Romanian market. There's a different point of view, probably different customers' behavior, different approach for the business. Can you explain a little bit about how you see this from your point of view for the cross border, and what can be a biggest difference between? Give us at least three samples of your let's say the improvements which you can offer to customers.
Uh,
Yeah.
so maybe like I think that the trend is there. I mean, and nothing can stop it. So we are becoming more consumers are becoming more and more comfortable, and they are expecting like the goods and their purchases to be delivered fast, and to their doors. And I don't think that this will change. The trend is very strong and it will last. And it's quite obvious that like nothing can stop it. Even pandemic, even different scenarios or different situations shouldn't stop it. But there are also, like, of course, there are also some key drivers that would encourage more and more cross-border trade. And I would say that basically, like, any company that is developing and any e-commerce company that is successful, there is a moment where when they think about like expanding, making more revenues and reaching new customers, especially from, I would say, Eastern Europe. There is a great market on the west of Europe with bigger purchasing volumes and like bigger baskets. So I think that, like, the opportunity is there and kind of nothing can stop it. And on the other side, I would say that companies will do more and more cross border, kind of because they can. I mean, because they're like pan-European regulations. So using the European Union regulations and like a common market, they can and they will use this opportunity. And also, I think, also because of the fact that there are more and more either logistics or marketing solutions that can be, like, that are scalable to other markets. So a company can um, can have a greater return on the investment it has already put in the, like, on the domestic market. So this is like a great leverage for companies to grow.
Thank you, Michał. And the next is Mircea.
Yes.
What do you think?
What I think. First of all, let's analyze a little bit what is the macroeconomic and macro trends in Europe, at least, because we are placed here in Europe. For this year, we have, let's say, due to the let's say war in Ukraine and also the inflation that now is raising in whole Europe. We have some, let's say, unpredictability and very, let's say, fluid situation that we face this year, which was a little bit different in the 2 years of pandemic. Because of that, I believe that there will be three main characteristics that we have to see this year and also the next year. One, it's because of this, let's say, different impact that the inflation, but also the uncertainty from the Ukraine will create in Europe, in all the countries in Europe. I believe that it will be a must for the e-commerce and retailers to diversify their offering, and cross-border it's one option which can help them to be more protective for the local market. Second, I believe that even though the trend will continue to grow the e-commerce, it will not be, let's say, uniform, meaning that the companies which will offer a very good quality and very good services will still growing, maybe not as expected from the last years, but they will have a good growth. But there will be also a lot of companies which will not put focus on the customer experience and shopping experience, and they will suffer. That will be the second trend that I will see in the e-commerce. And the third one, and this is also important, um, in order to fulfill all the needs in the market, at least with regard the delivery, you have to offer them a lot of option from I don't know, home delivery to out of office or let's say, different method of the delivery from fast to other method to do the delivery till I don't know. Try to be more close to what is needed in the market. By offering these three characteristics, I believe that it will be a good chance for the players in the e-commerce to thrive and also to make good opportunity.
Thank you, Mircea. Uh, Michał, both of us are located in Poland. Poland is very well known in Europe, like a European hub for the logistic. We become more and more attractive for the many companies. There are a lot of companies in the old days. They have their own warehouses, distribution centers across the continent. They have a lot of logistic behind, a lot of own resources. But right now the trend is totally different. The companies are shutting down their own operation. They outsource this to companies like you, and we observe that there is many industries or many producers like cosmetics, fashion, apparel brands. They are all shifting into this model. What do you think, and what you can recommend to such companies how they should deal with the problem between the own and outsource logistics?
Um, so basically, I would say that in uncertain times, it's better, and these times are kind of coming. It's always better to have a more flexible solution, yet a working solution, a solution that you can rely on. And of course, there are some advantages for having your own warehouse and managing it yourself. I mean, everything is under your control, and if you can run it well, like you can always create a margin on this business activity as well. Though I think it means taking a lot of risks, meaning you would have a lot of fixed costs that you would have to cover, and then a lot of investments that you need to cover. And then once you are thinking about going abroad, as we are discussing here right now, this would also mean that you would need to put even more investment and then become a professional basically in the logistics area. So I would say that the approach of outsourcing this kind of services and having this kind of services being outsourced, but from a reliable player company like Omnipack, uh, can be a great solution because then you can actually focus on business development, on marketing, on gaining more and more customers, and on reaching new international markets. And of course, like from our point of view, also there are like different approaches even to logistics, which means you can have more centralized model or decentralized model, and there are like pros and cons for this. But I would say that at the end, having a professional player behind you can become your advantage and like another asset where you can actually gain more market.
Thank you, Michał. Mircea, correct me if I'm wrong. Until recently, the Romania was kind of the inbound country. The goods are just come to Romania. But recently, I observed that more and more logistic companies are developing their operation in Romania. Some of the big players are setting the fulfillment center, distribution centers in Romania. Uh, how do you see this perspective? What is the future of e-commerce in Romania, especially with a cross-border view?
First of all, I believe that Michał has very well synthesized why is needed to have some, let's say, external substitute. Like, okay, instead of having fixed cost, to go to the variable cost. Second, in predictable times, you need to be more agile and flexible, and also try to minimize the risk. What's happening also in Romania in the last years, it's taking into consideration the same overall context in which we are right now. Besides the unpredictability and so on, Romanian market is not so big market, and also Mikhail spotted few question ago that in order to have a good reach on some external market, maybe some bigger market like Western countries like Germany, France, Spain, even Poland for let's say Romanian player, you need to go this on abroad, meaning that you have to move some volume from local market to cross-border markets. And what we saw in the last year and a half is that if we compare the growth rate on the local e-commerce comparing with the volumes on the cross-border, there is I don't know at least 3 or 4 times more growth rate in the trans or cross-border activities in Romania from previous years. Therefore, there are good signs that Romanian companies and also Romanian players, in order to still remain competitive and in the market, they have to expand their activities outside Romania. One option is to do it from Romania, but also they could use a player like Omnipack to use it as a local hub there. And besides the, let's say, fixed or variable cost, they will have very quickly the possibility to test the new markets and see if they have the potential in the future.
Uh, Mircea, one more, if you don't mind. Uh, for e-commerce sale, is the one of the key element of the customer experience is successful and quick delivery. Especially the last mile one of the most important element, because this is in fact this process is literally end of the shopping experience from the customer perspective. Not just closing the basket when he is ordering something, but the final delivery is the final experience which customer has. Uh, uh, how the postie can influence not only the companies like Omnipack, but also the customers and end users by your solution.
It's a very good question. What
Thank you.
we realized in the last year or so is that in the shopping experience you have two important moments. One is that when you will select the goods and you have there a lot of emotion put in there, especially for some products. And then the second part, which creates a lot of emotion, is the, let's say, waiting to deliver the goods. And if you compare what will remain in customer mind from those two important moments, which create some, let's say, emotions, the last one, the delivery, it's the most important. At least it's what we capture in the customer feedback that we collect. Therefore, what we see with our clients that it's not only a good thing for the retailers and in general the e-commerce to put some effort to what is the customer experience in the site till the shopping basket is closed, but also how you prolong or extend that shopping experience till the delivery, having, I don't know, very transparent the delivery process, interacting with the end user, be transparent with them, give them possibility to interact, and I will say that okay, it's important to have a very fast delivery, but also it's more important to give predictability and visibility to the end users. And this is why we develop an mobile user app which give the possibility for the end user to track all their orders from all the retailers in the market and be informed in real time with the real time notification what's happening with their order, and if they want to change something, and at the end of the process to give the feedback for the retailers or who is the, let's say, the company which managed the deliveries to have the feedback and see what was their entire shopping experience and how they could improve in the future. And by doing that, with some of our clients to which we work with, we successfully, let's say, improve the net promoter score at least with 20-25% after 2 months of working with us.
Sounds good, promising. I will be a customer for sure. I need to install the app from my favorite shop in hope that this shop will use the platform. Okay.
Actually, it is no need to be our client. We offer this functionality for, let's say, the clients or the shoppers, which are clients of our clients or retailers to whom we work with. But it's also available for, let's say, other, let's say, retailers and e-commerce outside the Postis ecosystem.
Yeah, this is what I mean. Me as a consumer, I would like to go to the e-commerce platform, to the shop, which offer the most expanded portfolio for the delivery, because I want to have a choice, as simple as that. And then my preferred shop would be not with the lowest possible price, because usually something is behind this, but with the best offer for the, especially for the delivery. This is why I'm looking for this kind of platforms. Another question to Michał. We are talking about a Polish company, Romanian company, and international business. It's a quite tricky, because when you are running the company from the Polish or Romanian mentality perspective for the business, you think differently that your customers and their customers. Uh, then what is from your perspective? What is important? What should be done by the retailers to fulfill the expectation of international customers using the platform like you?
Yeah. So thank you. I would also add something to what Mircea said. I would say that it's not even creating this incremental, value and experience for the consumer when you have the whole visibility of the goods that you bought and of the shipment, but it's also something that you can it's something that is creating a value uh, to make the conversion. So basically, people are sometimes, a lot of the times, actually, they are not buying a good because they don't have their method of payment or their method of shipment, so on and so forth. So I think it's not only the value post purchase, but it's also a value like pre purchase, where this can create like additional revenue for the e-commerce business. So the more options, as you mentioned, the more options you have, the expectation of the current consumer is basically he wants to decide, and the markets are becoming more and more customer centric. And I would say what we are facing in the moment is at the same time like a global perspective, because markets are becoming more and more global, and borders are opened. We have like like Europe is a very big region. Yet at the same time, there are some like local preferences of the customers. So definitely, let's talk about even a Germany where you have 62 million consumers, online consumers, and 46 million of them bought something from abroad, which is like a very nice value. So basically, like German consumer want to buy something from abroad, but they expect to, of course, to have a product described in their language. They expect certain last mile couriers because they got used to some kind of service. They expect certain delivery times, so like the shipment should be delivered within 40 hours maximum. And like the delivery method or payment, like Germany is known for the fact that a lot of payments are being made by PayPal. So if e-commerce business doesn't have it, basically it's a lost opportunity, and so on and so forth. So there are like many aspects that have to be fulfilled for an e-commerce business to make the business running from the consumer perspective.
Thank you, Michał. Mircea, let's continue this. The people want to have the choice, of course, absolutely, and your platform, your solution, giving to customers, to consumers, the wide range of the possibilities, because your platform is offering the hundreds of carriers across the Europe with this, many different solutions for the delivery, time in transit, type of delivery, value-added services to those last mile effort which our carriers are doing. How it working in case of the cross-border delivery, where the most of the time you have a different players for international segment, and how the local capillarity. Tell us about this.
Yeah, we we wanted, and this is what we promised for our client, that delivery cross border should be as simple and having the same option as delivering locally in one country. And we make a lot of effort to put all these options available for them, no matter if they work with us in Romania, in Poland, Czech Republic, France, Germany. They will have all the options that they needed, and also what Michael said, that you are used to work with some specific company from the countries. And if you buy something from a Romanian company, but it's delivery in Germany, they should have the same shopping experience and delivery experience as being a local, let's say, retailer. Therefore, we strive to add as many delivery options in our catalog, let's say, and try to simplify the flow, but also when they choose to select the delivery company, but also on the delivery itself, to be, let's put it like this, even though it's a cross-border delivery, to be kind of as home delivery from their point of view. Should be transparent without any additional friction from their point of view. Of course, not always it's possible to fulfill that need, but we try with our clients and partners to simplify the integration and also the customer flow in order to be as uh, simple as in a local market.
Thank you, Mircea. Um,
Which
we
I would
are right
say,
now.
which is a challenge, I would say, because it's covering a lot of markets with those local preferences, and yeah, this is something that I believe is can be very, very helpful, right? Because right now when we are discussing, I would say that it seems so easy. It's not. You have to fulfill so many expectations, and you have so much competition out there in the market. So every single factor kind of counts, right? So I just want to add that it's a very important topic.
Yeah, Michał, thank you very much. In fact, this is why I'm saying that 30 years ago, it was very simple to send the package from A to B because usually you have one or two carriers which offer the basic service, and that's all. Right now, you can choose several, many hundreds of them, and especially having the tools like a Posty platform when the algorithms with the artificial intelligence thinking behind and optimizing the every single shipping process day by day, minute by minute, second by second. This is a amazing tool which can really support business and customer experience. Yeah. Okay,
Definitely.
gents, I have a few more questions. Let's move forward. Um, Returns. I think this is a very hot topic, not only because it's summer, but also because some of the people saying returns are free, which is not true because nothing is for free. Somebody have to pay for this sooner or later. And then, what do you think? How the companies should manage the returns? Should they just avoid this by raising the prices for returns, like for example, like Zara recently, or maybe this should be still free of charge, or maybe another solutions to optimize the returns because return is a simple cost for somebody. What do you think, Michał?
So of course there are like two perspectives, but well, I would say that at the end of the day, the market decides in a way. So companies can have different approaches, but I would say that basically consumers expect the returns to be handled well and to be comfortable. So this is and easy in a way, and also like there is a regulation behind, like a fundamental and underlying regulation that you can return the product within 14 days, and I think it's value itself, and this creates more and more online purchases. So returns is something that we cannot avoid. I would say this will happen, but it's important how this is handled. And of course, right now there are like there is a cost, right? So maybe the optimization process is the most important, especially right now when fuel surcharges happen and basically shipping the goods become more and more costly. I would say what e-commerce businesses can do, they can try to again avoid as many returns as possible, which would mean many different solutions, but basically describing their products as accurately as possible with photos, with detailed descriptions, maybe even with artificial intelligence. I mean, augmented reality, when you can try on goods so they are not returned. But of course, there is a sizing thing, so something that creates returns, and the packaging. So what it said that 60 to 65% of returned items are linked to poor product information, and poor decision making, and sometimes products are delivered are not uh, are faulty when they come, so they are not packed well. So this is something what companies can influence, and in my opinion, um, somebody has to take the cost. But this is something to be handled. We cannot avoid this.
Mircea?
I will start with the end. It's something that we cannot have let's say delivery without returns. We cannot have zero returns. There are some let's say fundamental factors for the return. Therefore, we have to start from this. We have to handle the returns. Now, uh, depending on how you approach this, the best way to handle the return is that first you don't have to, due to the regulation, but not only about that, because we also have some, let's say, data that shows that if you even prolong the let's say, the normal return rate or the possibility to return goods in 14 days, if you have a good, let's say, shopping experience, you can reduce the number of returns by starting from the beginning, informing very well the customers, having a very good customer flow till the delivery, and also the possibility to do post delivery, including the return very easily without any frictions. But having said that, then you will have to do a lot of optimization, which can be addressed during the entire flow and try to minimize the returns. What we notice in our case, for instance, and we analyze, as you mentioned, last year, half a million orders, is that there is a direct correlation. For instance, if you promise that you will deliver the goods in 24 hours or 48 hours, if you exceed the promise, and it's not if it's quickly or not, but if you exceed the promise that you made to your clients, then there is a exponential probability to return the goods. Second, there are a lot of factors which come with, I don't know, if you pay with card or if it's with cash on delivery and some other factors. All these could be optimized and try to offer best option for the retailers and people which are handling the goods in order to minimize the number of returns, but keeping in mind that you cannot have zero returns, but try to have more, let's say, happy customers and in general to deliver your promises from what product you deliver, how you deliver it, how it's packaged, and at the end of the day, to have the freedom to choose if the product do not fit or they done the wrong choice to be able to be returned. If you do all this in time, you will be able to, let's say, reduce the number of returns and also have a very good loyalty from the customers.
Interesting, but yeah, let's move further because so we are approaching the end of the today's business reinvented. I would like to give to our audience some more details. Let's share the secret sauce which you have in your receipt for international for players who are trying to expand for the international markets. What would be three things what they need to consider planning the expansion? Michał?
So I would say we have a lot of markets, so it's very important to understand and analyze which market you would like to enter, which means getting some data about demand and competition so you understand what are the circumstances that you are entering into, kind of, and then understand your unique selling points, how you differentiate from the competition, because it's a new market, so it will be definitely more challenging for you to deliver the added value. So this would be like the first 2 points. And connected with that, I would say that because it's something new, like allocate some budget to test the market, so you don't overspend yet. Like you have enough money to actually test if this is working for you or not. And of course, we already talked about those local preferences of the consumers. So like play the game well in a way. I mean, like do your check boxes and tick all of them to make this new venture that you are trying to build in a new market, a possible and a winning scenario.
Okay, thanks. Mircea?
I will try to be very brief and try to take more like a startup approach. First, do it fast and try to experiment, meaning that as much you will analyze the market where you will enter, the best option to validate if it's a good or not market for you, you have to test it. Therefore, you have to choose carefully what are the solutions to use in order to be able to experiment in some markets. Experiment in some markets, experiment some product in some markets, and so on, and figure out very quickly if it's okay for you or not to go on that market with those products. Second, as Michael said, be aware that even though there is something that works very well in the market that you play right now, you should take in consideration some local, cultural, or whatever factors that can influence the success or failure in that market. And third, I believe that you have to be very prepared from the beginning that you have to change the game uh, in the matter of weeks or something like that. Because if you miss an opportunity, it will not last for forever. You have to take it as quick as possible and try to let's say scale it very quickly. If you do these three things from the beginning and have the proper mindset, you will succeed. By the end of the day, it's a trial and error process that you have to develop yourself in the new markets for a specific period of time.
True, true. And this leads me to the very last question for today's session. Uh, just warn them about three things what they shouldn't never ever even try. Michał?
Maybe I would say something obvious that seems to be obvious our current discussion, but remember about preferred delivery options, remember about preferred courier company, and remember about ecological practices. This is something we didn't mention, but in some markets, this is very important.
True, true, very true. Especially the Nordics, who are
Yeah.
very, very focused on the sustainability. But more and more countries are developing the sustainable delivery methods as a must. Mircea?
Um, you have to know from the beginning that you'll have a lot of opportunity. You have a big market, which is the European market, but you will have some local, I don't know, fiscal and currency that you have to take in account. Therefore, it will be more complex. Instead of managing, I don't know, one price, you have to manage 10 prices, 10 fiscal regulation. Therefore, you have to avoid this. Second, or try to overcome this. Second, I will come back to what I said. Uh, because you have to experiment as quick as possible. Don't overanalyze, especially in the condition that we are right now, with a lot of I don't know volatility in the market. If you don't do it quickly and over analyze if it's a good market or not, you'll miss the opportunity. And third one, I believe that by trying to approach in the local mindset a foreign country and try to do what works well in your local country is not something to let's say replicate in other markets. You have to adapt to the local condition and try to understand customers from that specific market. And as you mentioned, Nordics prefer maybe more sustainability approach than maybe people from Romania or Poland.
Thank you, Mircea. Let me close this by one of my favorite sentence that you never have a second chance to make the first impression. Yeah, that's very true. Like with the second attempt delivery is usually twice more expensive than the first successful delivery. Gentlemen, thank you very much for your time. It was very nice to talk to you and meet you. It was a next chapter of the business reinvented. Mircea, CEO of Postis, and Michał Gębala, head of partnership and
Merchant success at the moment.
merchant success from Omnipack. Congratulations!
Remember,
You're back from vacations and promotions.
kind of more responsibilities, you know.
Gentlemen, thank you very much. It was a pleasure to meet you and have a good afternoon. Thank you.
Take care. Thank you very much.
Thank
Pleasure.
you very much. Bye bye.
Thank you. Bye bye.